The entire village gathered in silence and watched 6 grown men weep and confess to a murder, and the moment the last word left the last man's mouth, the well collapsed and swallowed itself into the earth completely. But what would you do if the spirit came for you, and the only way to stop it was to destroy everything your family built on a lie? Every person alive is standing on top of something their family buried. A secret, a sin, a name that was never supposed to be spoken again. And in every culture on this earth, the story is always the same. The buried things never stay buried forever. By the end of this story, you will feel something you did not expect. Not just fear, guilt, relief, and a question that will follow you home. What truth is your family still hiding? The truth that broke a village. Every man, every woman, every child in Naumko village stood in silence and listened to 6 grown men weep and confess to a murder that happened before most of them were born, and the ground beneath their feet trembled the entire time. What would you do if you discovered that the house you grew up in, the name you carried, the life you lived was built on top of someone else's grave? Some truths are so heavy that the moment they are finally spoken out loud, the whole world around you shifts. The air changes, the light changes, and the people you thought you knew become strangers standing in familiar faces. This happens in real families, in real villages, in real cities, every single day. Stay with this story until the very end, because what happened in Naumko village the morning the truth came out will remind you that justice does not always come in a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from somewhere much, much older. Elder Menza called the village together before the sun reached the middle of the sky. They came slowly at first, in ones and twos. Word had spread that something had happened at the old compound, but nobody knew exactly what. They gathered in the open space at the center of the village: men, women, children, old people leaning on sticks, young mothers with babies tied to their backs. All of them standing in the morning heat, wondering why Elder Mense's face looked like that. Like a man who had already died inside and was just waiting for his body to catch up. The 6 men stood together in front of the crowd. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Elder Menza opened his mouth and told the truth. All of it. Every name, every action, everything that happened the night Maymarkwa died. He did not soften it. He did not shape it or clean it up or find gentler words for ugly things. He stood in front of his entire village and he said exactly what their fathers had done and exactly what they had all chosen to protect by staying silent their whole lives. The crowd was completely still. When he finished, the silence lasted a long time. Then an old woman at the back of the crowd, a woman so old nobody could remember a time when she had not been old, let out a sound. Not a scream, not a cry. Something louder and longer than both of those things. A sound that came from somewhere deep in her body. I knew, she said. Her voice carried across the whole gathering like she was speaking directly into each person's ear. I always knew. We all knew. And we said nothing. That broke something open in the crowd. People began to weep. Not just the young ones. The old men. The grandmothers. People who had carried the weight of that unspoken thing for decades without even fully understanding what they were carrying. It poured out of them like water from a cracked pot. Darko, the youngest of the 6 men, dropped to his knees in the dirt. What do we do? He said. His voice was the voice of a child even though he was a grown man. How do we fix this? Elder Menza looked at him. We do what she asked, he said simply. They prepared the burial that same afternoon. It was not easy. There was no body to bury, only the well, which now stood open and silent in the middle of that ruined compound. But the elders knew the old ceremonies, the ones that had not been performed in years, the ones that some of the younger villagers had never even seen. They brought white cloth, they brought palm wine, they brought the herbs that the oldest women knew how to prepare. They swept the compound clean, they cut back the weeds, they propped up what remained of the crumbling walls with fresh wood, and then they spoke her name, Maymarkwa. The first person to say it was Elder Menza. He said it clearly and without flinching. Then the other 5 men said it. Then the old woman who had spoken in the crowd said it. Then one by one the rest of the village said it too. Each person speaking her name out loud into the open air like they were handing something back that had been stolen. Maymarkwa, Maymarkwa, Maymarkwa. The name moved through the crowd like a wave. Quiet at first, then growing until the whole village was saying it together, and the sound of it filled the compound and rose up above the dead mango tree and spread out across the village like it was reclaiming every corner of every place that had pretended she never existed. When the last echo faded, everything went still. And then the well collapsed. Not violently, not with a crash or a roar. It simply folded inward, slowly and quietly, like something exhaling after holding its breath for a very long time. The stones that lined it dropped away. The earth around it shifted and settled. Within moments, there was nothing left but a shallow depression in the ground, already filling with red dust. Gone. Completely gone. Nobody moved for a long time. Then Darko looked down at the place where the well had been and said quietly, "Is she at rest?" The old woman who had spoken earlier walked slowly to the edge of where the well had been. She stood there and looked down at the red earth. She was quiet for so long that people began to wonder if she had heard the question. Then she said, "She has been waiting 40 years for someone to say her name." "Yes, child. She is at rest." They built a small memorial in that compound. A simple stone with her name carved into it. May Marquardt. No dates because nobody knew exactly when she was born. Just her name. Just those 2 words cut into stone so that no wind or rain or silence could ever erase them again. The compound was not abandoned after that. People began to pass through it. Children played near the memorial without fear. Old people came to sit near it in the evenings, the way you sit near someone you are finally allowing yourself to remember. Nobody in Namkor ever forgot what their silence had cost. And nobody, not one single person in that village, ever sealed a truth again without remembering what happens when the buried things finally decide they have waited long enough. Some debts cannot be hidden forever. Some names refuse to be forgotten. And some wells, no matter how heavy the stone placed on top, will always find a way to open. Thank you for watching Goddy's Folktale Lessons. If this story moved you, shook you, or made you think, subscribe right now and turn on your notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because the next story is already waiting.